Welcome to the deep dive. We like to take a big stack of research and boil it all down to the good stuff, the juicy bits. Today we are diving into the life of Charles Wooten. It's kind of like a true crime novel, except, well, it's a true story.
Yeah,
So buckle up.
for a wild ride.
We've got his Wikipedia article and a few newspaper clippings.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, this case is a doozy. It really makes you think. This guy, Charles Wooten, committed murder, served some time, got paroled.
And then things took a dark turn, a very dark turn.
Exactly.
What makes Wooten's case so fascinating is the timeline. His crimes span decades,
Yeah.
punctuated by, well, periods of imprisonment and even attempts at a normal life.
Yeah.
It really begs the question, what is rehabilitation? What are the limits of second chances?
Exactly. So, to kind of set the stage, Charles Wooten was born in 1950 in Hearst, Texas. And it seems like he was, well, he was a criminal from an early age. At 19, he was sentenced to 5 years for armed robbery.
Now, this is where it starts to get interesting. He was released after only 18 months, and, well, unfortunately, that kind of paved the way for his future crimes. Just a few months later, in 1969, he was involved in the abduction and murder of Lloyd Dewey Choate. He was a gas station attendant.
And there's this one really creepy detail from a newspaper clipping. The sheriff, at the time, suspected that Wooten brought 2 teenage girls to see the body.
Ugh.
It's just so disturbing.
Bringing other people to a crime scene, especially young people who are, well, impressionable,
Yeah.
it really suggests a desire to shock and, to exert power over others. It could point to some deeper psychological motivation, beyond just the actual crime itself.
That's a good point. It's like he wanted to, I don't know, like make sure that everyone knew just how dangerous he could be. And sadly, it didn't stop there. Shortly after that, Wooten murdered again. It was another gas station attendant. This time, the victim was named David Daniels. The brutality of this crime is hard to even imagine. Daniels was stabbed 36 times.
36 times. It's just unbelievable. Initially, there was some confusion about the suspects in the first murder, the Choate murder. It wasn't until Wooten's accomplice, basically ratted him out,
Oh, wow.
that investigators were able to put all the pieces together.
So basically, this accomplice turned on Wooten and led the police right to him.
That's right. And then things took another unexpected turn. Wooten got arrested again, but this time it was for attempting to rob a grocery store where his own father worked.
Oh, wow. Talk about a family drama.
Right. And here's where we start to get a glimpse into Wooten's psychology. He actually offered a false confession. He said that he had shot a blonde woman, but of course the authorities knew he was lying.
So was he trying to, like, throw the investigators off, or was it something else?
Well, it's hard to say for sure, but it definitely suggests a certain cunning, a willingness to manipulate. It adds another layer to his character. Ultimately, Wooten decided to plead guilty to both murders, to avoid the death penalty. So that resulted in 2 life sentences.
2 life sentences. You'd think that would be the end of the story, but it's not, is it?
Oh, not even close. Because during his time in prison, something pretty amazing happened.
Okay, I'm hooked. Tell me, what happened?
Well, he earned a master's degree,
Wow.
and he became a skilled leather worker.
Wow. That's really surprising. Was it genuine self-improvement or just a way to, impress the parole board?
It's a great question, and it's one that the authorities struggled with. Because, well, here's the thing. Wooten also consistently maintained that he was innocent, even though he had already pleaded guilty.
So even in prison, he was playing mind games.
It seems that way.
Well,
But his efforts paid off. His father, Arliss, really believed in him and campaigned tirelessly for his release. He wrote tons of letters. He gave a lot of interviews where he described Charles as a changed man, someone who was haunted by his past but determined to turn his life around.
it's just so interesting how people can change, or at least they can appear to change. And I think that's what makes this case so fascinating. We're always trying to understand what motivates people, what makes them tick.
Yeah, it really is a fascinating question, isn't it? About redemption. And with Wooten's case, the big question was, had he really changed? Would he be a danger to society? That became like the central issue at his parole hearing.
So after years of appeals and his father, fighting for him, was he granted parole?
He was. In 1992, after spending more than 2 decades in prison, Wooten was a free man.
Wow.
He went back to his hometown, moved in with his father. She even got a job.
Really?
And for a while, it seemed like he was on the right track.
So he was turning his life around. That must have been such a relief for his father.
Really?
Arliss, after all those years of, never giving up on him.
Oh, absolutely. But, and this is the really tragic part, just 1 year after his release, in 1993, Charles murdered his father.
Oh my God.
That's awful. After everything his father did for him, I mean, to help him get out of prison, it's just heartbreaking.
Yeah. And the details of the murder are, well, they're pretty gruesome. He shot Arliss, dismembered his body, and then tried to burn the remains in a field.
Wow. It's just, I don't know, it's hard to even understand that level of violence, especially towards someone who had shown him so much love and support.
It's just a shocking betrayal. It really makes you question the whole idea of rehabilitation. How could someone who appeared to have turned his life around, who earned a master's degree, who learned a trade, how could he commit such a horrible crime?
So were the police able to catch him, right away?
It took a few days.
Yeah.
One of Arliss's other sons reported him missing, and that started the investigation. The police, they eventually found the field where the remains were. A kid in the neighborhood had even reported seeing someone putting what looked like a body into a car. Oh my God, that poor kid. That's a really good reminder that these crimes, as awful as they are, they have real-world consequences. They affect so many people.
Absolutely. These aren't just stories. They're real lives, real families, and real communities that are shattered by these events.
So what happened when the police finally caught Wooten?
They arrested him, of course, and then they brought him back to the crime scene. And here's the really creepy part. According to the reports, he showed no remorse whatsoever.
It's like he's a totally different person than the guy who was, working so hard to improve himself in prison.
Yeah, it really is a bizarre contrast. It makes you wonder if his transformation in prison was all an act, just a way to get out,
Right.
or was he really trying to change? And then for some reason, these darker impulses took over.
Yeah, it's really a puzzle. So did the authorities ever figure out a motive? Like, why would he do such a thing?
The prosecution thought that maybe he wanted to collect on his father's life insurance policy, but there wasn't enough evidence to prove that.
So we're left with more questions than answers. It's like he's intentionally shrouded in mystery.
Yeah, and there's just this certain, I don't know, like coldness about him. It makes it hard to really understand what was going on in his head.
So with the murder of his father, did Charles end up back behind bars?
He did. Wooten went back to court, and this time there was no doubt about it. He was guilty. He ended up pleading guilty again, and he got another life sentence.
I mean, it's unbelievable. He ends up right back where he started, after his dad fought so hard to get him out. It really makes you think, can people really change? Can they be rehabilitated?
Yeah. It's a question that has bothered, experts for years. Like, what makes someone change their behavior?
Mhm.
And how do we balance, the need for justice with giving someone a second chance?
Those are some pretty big questions. And Wooten's case, I mean, it doesn't really give us any easy answers, does it? His story is just this crazy mix of, I don't know, manipulation, but also maybe some genuine attempts at, trying to be better.
Right. And it's also important to remember, the impact this had on his family. Like, imagine being one of Arliss Wooten's other kids. They lost their father in this just awful way. And then they have to deal with the fact that their own brother was responsible.
That's so sad. It's just a reminder that these crimes, they don't just affect, the immediate victims. They ripple outward and everyone feels the pain.
You're right. And in this case, when Wooten was sentenced, well, the community was pretty divided. Some people felt like, okay, another life sentence, that's enough. But others thought he should have gotten the death penalty.
Well, I can see both sides. We're talking about a man who took 3 lives over, 20 years?
Yeah.
It's hard to know what a fair punishment would even be.
It's true. And the thing is, Wooten's story isn't actually over yet. He's serving a life sentence now. But he could actually be eligible for parole again in 2028.
He could get out again. Seriously. But I mean, given what he's done, that seems kind of crazy.
I know, it's hard to believe, right? But that's how the justice system works sometimes. Even someone who's committed multiple murders, well, they still might get another shot at freedom.
That's a lot to take in. It makes you really stop and think about, what is the purpose of punishment? Can people change? What does justice even mean?
Yeah, Wooten's case really brings up all these difficult questions. How do we balance protecting society with, the idea that people can turn their lives around? And how can we ever know if someone is really, truly sorry and deserves another chance?
No easy answers, that's for sure. But maybe that's the whole point, These deep dives, they force us to think about the tough stuff. They help us understand that even the most, black and white situations, well, they might not be so simple after all.
You got it. It's easy to get caught up in the drama of true crime. But I think the real value is in thinking about the bigger questions, the societal issues that these cases bring up.
Well, I think we did that today. Our deep dive into the life of Charles Wooten has been, well, it's been a journey. It's really made us question what it means to be human.
It has. And remember, while Wooten's story is pretty unique, the questions it raises, well, they apply to all of us. We're all capable of doing good and bad things,
Mhm.
and we all have to try to figure out how to, make the world a place where there's both justice and compassion.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep on exploring and keep on questioning.